This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. We have a great show teed up for you today, involving music and folks in our region who are trying to remove the stigma around mental health. But first, I want to let you know about your next opportunity to watch a live taping of Vermont Edition. Thursday, May 15th, is our annual Spring Gardening Show with Charlie Nardozzi. It's one of our most popular shows of the year. We get tons of calls with gardening questions and updates on what you are planting this season. This year, we're going to be taping the show in front of a live studio audience at our Vermont Public Colchester studios. Audience members will be able to submit questions for the show. And don't worry, we are also taking calls. And after the show, we'll do a seed swap. It's going to be a really fun event, and tickets are free, but you do need to reserve them in advance. And there are only, at last count, like 50 left. So if you want to come, head to vermontpublic.org/events. And again, that's our Spring Gardening Show on Thursday, April 15th. Now on to today's show. May 1st marks the start of Mental Health Month. It's an important time for all three of our guests today, whose work sits at the intersection of mental health and music. Next Saturday, May 10th, at the Flynn Center in Burlington, the Vermont Symphony Orchestra will hold its season finale. One of the three pieces in the program is an evocative work inspired by a Canadian teenager's life and death. Joining the VSO to perform it are members of the Me Too Orchestra, a music organization for people with mental illness and the folks who support them. They run programs in Burlington, Boston, and Manchester. Joining me today are the VSO's music director, Andrew Crust, and the head of the Me Too Orchestra, Caroline Whiddon. Andrew, first, welcome to Vermont Edition. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me on.
And Andrew is also an American-Canadian conductor with an international career conducting orchestra, opera, ballet, film, and pops programs. And I should also note here that the Vermont Symphony Orchestra is a Vermont Public business sponsor. And Caroline Whiddon, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Caroline is the executive director of Me Too, which she co-founded with her husband in Burlington. And Caroline formerly served as the executive director of the Vermont Youth Orchestra Association. And last but not least, here to guide us in this conversation around music and mental health is Pat Lambden. He's a Burlington-based music therapist. His practice is called Universal Sound Music Therapy. Pat, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks so much.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you in the studio with us today.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Pat, what exactly is a music therapist?
Good question. Music therapists work in a lot of different settings, but basically, there are many definitions. So I always find this question difficult to answer, actually. But essentially, a music therapist is in this country board certified music therapists. They work using music as a clinical intervention, basically to address any number of health concerns. We work with a lot of different populations, and it's a musical relationship really that takes place within a therapeutic container, and it can look like many different things. It can look like improvising together, making music together in a very active way, singing songs that are meaningful to the client. It could be listening to music. I wanted to mention this kind of music therapy that's called guided imagery in music because it uses a lot of classical music. But maybe I'll get to that at some point. But so that's a more receptive way of listening to music in a receptive state and addressing different health concerns, mental health issues.
It sounds like such a multifaceted practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so diverse, and depending on the situation, depending on the person, it can address any number of different things.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I know in the VSO's upcoming performance on Saturday, you all will be addressing through music some of those themes that Pat just brought up, and they all kind of come together in this really special piece that you all will be performing about a young woman named Amanda Todd. Could you tell us about her?
That's right. And I'd like to just correct you briefly. The concert is not this Saturday, but the Saturday after.
I
So
apologize.
please don't show up to the Flynn
No,
early.
please don't.
That's all right.
We'll
Um,
correct that.
That's right. And yes, this piece is, I'm so excited to share it with the world. The composer, also Jocelyn Morlock, was someone who had mental health struggles herself. She passed away, I think, just under 2 years ago. She was a friend of mine. And well, the story of Amanda Todd, if I can start by telling that, is one which luckily has a positive legacy in that she affected so many people's lives. But her life was very short and very difficult. She was 12 when she started to be abused and exploited by an older man online. In a similar situation to the film, the TV show Adolescence, there was a photo that he had sort of extorted from her, and that became dispersed among her fellow students, and she started being bullied. She changed schools 3 times. She began, falling into a deep depression and using drugs, and at the age of 15, she took her own life.
Hmm.
She was such a bright teenager. She sang. She was also a musician. But the only upside to this is that she made a wonderful video with sort of cue cards and silently told her story to the world. And that, along with the Amanda Todd Legacy Society, founded by her mother, Carol, has been a true inspiration to many young girls, especially who are dealing with this issue, which is very prevalent, I think, around our world today. And Jocelyn Morlock, the composer, was asked to write a piece around this topic. And at first she was quite hesitant, but I think she realized the impact that such a piece could have in using music, which gets right to the heart of an issue, to tell Amanda's story and to spread that news to the world.
And Andrew, I know you were friends with Jocelyn. Did she ever speak to you about why she was hesitant, or what the process of composing this piece was like when she did get started?
Yes, and I do think, well, she struggled with the idea of digging deep into this topic. And one of the other pieces on the program, Mahler's First Symphony, is another piece that goes deeply into these dark emotional places. And she worried that she didn't, maybe she wouldn't do it justice. But of course, she was the perfect person to do it. Jocelyn was a singular individual. This is the second piece I've brought to the VSO by her. And she was always promoting the music of others. And actually, mental health was central to her music. She's written pieces about anxiety, for example. There's a piece called Disquiet. And there's another piece called Solace, in those moments where she could find solace. And so she struggled with the idea of presenting it properly, but she did such an incredible job. And the piece won a Juno, which is kind of like a Canadian Grammy. And in Canada, it's become one of, I think, the pillars of Canadian music repertoire. So I'm trying to bring that across the border.
And joining you to perform this very special piece, there's members of the Me Too Orchestra, an organization that Caroline, you founded in 2011 with your husband. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Sure, I'd love to. I met my husband, Ronald Brownstein, in Vermont, and this was during a period in his life when his bipolar disorder was really he was struggling with the symptoms of this diagnosis and how this was playing out in his life. Ronald is a brilliant conductor, and yet during this period of time, right after I met him in Vermont, he was also bullied and kind of ostracized for his bipolar disorder and how it was playing out in his life. And he experienced some suicidal ideation during that time period. But thankfully, he was able to channel that into something hopeful. And he came to me and said, I want to create a place for musicians like me. And that was kind of the seedling from which Me Too was born. And now we are hosting orchestras and choruses and ensembles that are specifically created for people with and without mental illness to work together. So in our mind, it's really this ideal community. It's what life should look like, where people with and without bipolar disorder, addiction, depression are literally working side by side and creating great music together.
Hmm. And Pat, in your previous job before you had your private practice in Burlington, you actually crossed paths with folks at the Me Too Orchestra, right?
I did. I remember working at the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital for a few years when I first came to Vermont. And there was a time when the Me Too members of the U2 Orchestra did a performance at the hospital, and I helped to set that up. So, yeah, it was a really memorable performance to have. Such a beautiful opportunity to hear classical music in a setting like that, and to connect with the folks in the hospital that were struggling with their own mental health challenges. So, yeah.
Andrew, what is it like to collaborate with another set of musicians, another orchestra on a piece? Are there any logistical challenges to that, or is it all opportunity?
Very minimal logistical challenges. I think we're just really excited about so many things. This was not my idea. This was one of our staff member, Matt LaRocca's idea to collaborate with Me Too. And I thought immediately, for all the reasons, this was a great idea. And I think orchestras, the music world, the professional music world is full of mental health challenges. Those who are diagnosed, but also those just living the musician's life. It's an incredibly high performance pressure, stress, perfectionism. Our identities are tied to our achievement. If you're the principal oboe, just to say a random instrument, that is your life. That is who you are. And so, when things start to go wrong occasionally, or if you have a bad day, you tie that to yourself. I could go on and on about that. And so to collaborate with a group that has no stigma, that allows people to express themselves and to have all of this sort of sloppy humanness be accepted, I think that's incredibly valuable for a professional orchestra to experience a little bit of that, but also to invite those other groups in who may not be the largest arts organization in the state and have that kind of weight behind them. We want to spread the love and spread the joy. But this collaboration, I think, is just absolute perfection for this program, and we're very happy.
Mm. And Caroline, could you tell us a little bit more about the different folks who are in the Me Too Orchestra? I hear there's like a very wide age range, and you have 3 different locations where there are groups, so there's a geographical range as well.
Yeah, sure. So we knew from day one that we really wanted to remove the barriers to participation. So there are no auditions, there are no fees. So anybody who is comfortable playing an instrument or singing in a group is welcome through the door, and we will put them to work immediately. And we currently have, I'm going to say, ages kind of just postgraduate. Occasionally we'll have a college student, although they tend to be quite busy to begin with. But people maybe in their mid-20s all the way up through the, I'm going to say, mid-80s right now. So there's this beautiful multi-generational aspect to what we're doing, and people with mental illness at every decade who are showing up every week, happy to have a place to go where they are expected and where they are welcomed with open arms. I love that Pat was mentioning that he became familiar with Me Too at the Vermont Psychiatric Hospital. One of the things we really love is bringing music to unconventional places. And last night we were actually in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we have a chamber orchestra there, and we were playing in a recovery center. So a lot of people, battling addiction, doing their best to live their lives on balance and do things well. And it was so great to bring Beethoven's Symphony No. 1 into a recovery setting. So that's one of the things that we love doing.
Well, we do need to pause in just a moment for our first short break. But before we do, I'd like to ask our listeners if there's a piece of music that you turn to in difficult times. Could be classical, could be something else, and it could be something you listen to or that you play or sing yourself. You can call in and tell us about it at 800-639-2211. And while you ruminate on that, I'd like to play a clip from a 2023 performance by the Vermont Symphony Orchestra, conducted by our guest, Andrew Crust. It's by the Czech composer Smetana, and this piece is called Ma Vlast, or My Homeland. You're listening to Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, we are learning today about the connections between music and mental health and how 3 different music lovers in our region work to strengthen those ties. Our guests are Caroline Whiddon, the executive director of the Me Too Orchestra, the world's only classical music organization created for individuals with mental illnesses and the people who support them. We're also joined by the music director of the Vermont Symphony Orchestra, Andrew Crust. Their season finale next Saturday, May 10th, includes a collaborative performance with Me Too. And in the studio with me is Pat Lambden, a music therapist based in Burlington. We asked you before the break if there's types of music that you listen to support your own mental health or to help you through a difficult time. Jessica in Jericho writes, our family has been lucky enough to enjoy the VSO Masterwork series for decades. 2 of my rescue pieces are Dvorak's New World Symphony and Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring. These pieces can pull me out of any funk and remind me that humans are a small and temporary part of this beautiful biosphere. Let's go next to Buddy in Underhill. Buddy, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm calling to bring up a point about young children. I'm a teacher of a preschool, specifically college music.
Buddy, I'm so sorry. We are having trouble hearing you. If we could ask you to call back in, and we'll try to connect with you. I know you're trying to make a point about young children and music, which we would love to hear. But while Buddy does that, let's go to Judith in Brattleboro. Judith, go ahead.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you. I used Verdi's Requiem for a number of years to do grieving work that I needed to do. And I still turn to it when I need to cry. And I danced and cried and danced for many years, and it really helped so much.
Oh, thank you for calling in, Judith. Andrew, are you familiar with that piece?
Oh, of course. I'm putting all of these on our list for next season.
Well, thank you, Judith, for calling in. Pat, I'm curious if you work with many patients around grief. Does music play a particular role in therapy for folks who might be working through the loss of a loved one?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I'm thinking of some of the work I've done with a modality called guided imagery music, which I mentioned before, which involves listening to mostly classical music in a receptive state and dialoguing with the therapist while engaging in with the imagination. And And through this modality, we can choose music that's very particular, very carefully selected, to kind of support people to if it's grief, it's supporting them to get underneath of that, to like get to those emotions and be able to explore them more. So yeah, I've had some of those experiences where a piece or a collection of pieces has supported people to really like have an emotional release, to be able to cry, to be able to feel, sometimes to be able to connect with anger and all the various aspects of grief.
Yeah.
And I mean, grief takes a lot of time. It's not to say music is going to clear it all up, but I for sure can be a way to kind of get in touch with what's inside.
Yeah. Caroline, hearing Pat talk, I know that your performances with Me Too often involve audience Q&As or conversations about mental health alongside classical music performances. Do any of these themes that Pat's bringing up around grief specifically, and the feelings of depression or anxiety that can often come with that, do those ever come up in those conversations or performances?
I don't recall a specific conversation about grief,
Yeah.
but very often audience members will ask our musicians, what is this role specifically that music plays in your mental health? And their response very often is something along the lines of, look, I identify as someone with a diagnosis, and I live with the weight of that for the entire day, the whole time I'm awake. And then when I come to orchestra or go to the chorus rehearsal and I start getting involved with music, I forget that for 2 hours. So for them, music is really an escape. And that's true for me as well. I live with anxiety disorder. And for me, it's the slow movement to Mozart's Clarinet Concerto. I don't know why, but when I play that in my head, it allows me to sort of bring down my anxiety level and breathe again. So that's my piece.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. We have our caller Buddy in Underhill back on the line. Buddy, can you hear us okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me this time?
Yes, we
Hello,
can.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, good. So I am an early childhood music teacher, and I've been doing it for quite a while now. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that it's how important music is for children in general, like children who are victims of abuse and neglect, but specifically children that are on the spectrum. Music reaches children on the spectrum like very few other things do. And I don't know why, I just know that it is true, and I don't question it. And it's an amazing thing to see. A child that really doesn't respond to much else, all of a sudden respond to a guitar, the sound of a guitar and singing.
Buddy, thank you so much for calling in about that. Yes, the connections that that children specifically on the autism spectrum often have with music. Caroline, do you work with folks with the Me Too Orchestra who are on the autism spectrum?
It's a great question. And I have to say, we are not trained as music therapists. We position ourselves really as people who are open and accepting to people who are living with mental illness. And autism is a different, it's a different game. The autism
thank you for
diagnosis.
Clarifying that. I apologize for combining those two things.
Having said that, because we provide an opening, an accepting atmosphere, we do often get people who are on the autism spectrum. And in fact, one of the musicians that will be playing alongside the VSO this weekend is on the spectrum, and we have known him since he was a young man. And I knew him actually when I was executive director of the Vermont Youth Orchestra Association. So I have a decades-long, knowledge of this young man and his musicality. He's a fabulous musician, does happen to be on the spectrum. So it's something we're familiar with. And Buddy makes a great point.
Andrew, As we talk here about making classical music more more open to folks of all different backgrounds and abilities, I'm wondering, now that you have worked so closely with the Me Too Orchestra, if it raises any thoughts for you about ways that maybe not just the VSO specifically, but the classical music world at large could incorporate some of the tenets that Me Too kind of lives by in your own work.
We have so much to learn, I think, and I do hope that the workforce around the world in general is adapting in this new world to understanding mental illness in all of its various guises and releasing the stigma. I think the performing arts are a little slow to change because it's an incredibly high pressure situation, and some people have specific needs or caveats perhaps that are challenging to accommodate because everyone is different, and often it's easier to just forget about those people. But that would not behoove us, I think, as an organization, because every orchestra has people in it that struggle from mental health, even people who are on the spectrum. And I think it would be great for us to find ways to leave space for that, and to leave a little more flexibility in our industry, which can just be very, I don't want to say cutthroat, because of course we make music, we love what we do, but it's high intensity and it's high expectation. And so to create a little room, not only in the performance, but in the auditions, because of course all orchestral musicians in professional orchestras go through a typically blind audition in which they have 5 to 15 minutes to prove themselves. And that's one of the most stressful things you can imagine.
Yeah.
So how do we look into providing ways to make more people comfortable in that regard as well, and provide support at the workplace? I have certainly encountered musicians in a rehearsal who have been overwhelmed by what they're doing. This is an incredibly difficult physical feat, mental feat, and emotional feat all rolled into one. So I think we have a lot to learn from them.
Yeah. And Pat, when you are working with folks in the therapy space, do you find that there is a sort of necessary retraining that needs to go on around folks' approach to not just listening to, but maybe playing music as well? I think many of us who took music classes as kids and or maybe played professionally, and they feel that high level of this necessary perfectionism and competitiveness that has to go into it. And then when you go into therapy and are using music in that way, it's very, very different. I imagine you don't want those elements to be a part of it. How does that come up?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of like some therapy situations where I'm actively making music with people, where we're improvising, where we're entering into that kind of space. And I have had the experience of people coming into that space and kind of needing to orient to like, hey, this isn't about making beautiful, perfect music. This isn't about knowing what you're doing even. This isn't about being trained on an instrument, or because some people say things like, well, I don't know how to play the piano, or I don't know how to do this, which so it can be nerve-wracking to be in a space, especially an improvisational situation where I'm inviting people to, hey, why don't you just literally play around with this instrument, this drum, this piano, this xylophone, and see what kind of sounds you can make, and just follow your intuition with it.
Kind of going back to our caller Buddy's note about how children interact with music and getting rid of those inhibitions that we have as adults.
The beautiful thing about children, I think, is that they know how to play, and they naturally play. And a big part of music making is that's what we say. That's our languaging. We play music. And so it's learning to free oneself from this idea of needing to know how to do it right, because a lot of music therapists, we always say, like, there's no wrong way to make music. We're trying to frame it so that everyone can come to it and feel like they're a musician too, even though they're not a trained musician necessarily, but the idea is that we're meeting in this space where we're musician to musician, we're collaborating, we're doing something together, and that there's space for everything in that. Yeah.
Well, let's take one more call here. We have Deb calling in from South Burlington. Deb, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Deb, and I am one of the percussionists in the Burlington Me Too Orchestra and have been for many years. I have to say that being part of this orchestra is transformational for me. I have battled with anxiety and sometimes depression and was always kind of in denial about it. But joining this group has made me able to come to terms with it, to feel good about it, and also just to have the support of every other member of the orchestra. Because there are no auditions, it's just a very safe place. If you make a mistake and then you work on your part and you get it right, everybody cheers. I don't think you'll see that in many other orchestras. But I absolutely am profoundly thankful to both Ronald and Carolyn for founding this group.
Thank you, Deb, for calling in. Caroline, is there anything you'd like to say to Deb, or how does that call make you feel?
Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful surprise, and I knew Deb's voice the moment I heard it, and yeah, it makes me very emotional. I mean, Ronald is always saying to me, "I can't believe that this is so impactful for people," and I think there's something very beautiful about the fact that he had the idea for this group really in a moment of desperation. He was looking to create a safe space for himself, and to now know that it's such a safe and joyful place for music making for so many other people is just so wonderful. Really moving.
Well, I think it's time for a little more music here. Let's play an excerpt from a Me Too orchestral performance. This is from 2022 at Boston Symphony Hall by their combined orchestras from Boston, Manchester, and Burlington. You're going to hear them playing the Overture to the Barber of Seville by Rossini, and it was conducted by Caroline's husband and Me Too co-founder, Ronald Bronstein. Now, if you have ever played in the Me Too Orchestra or the Vermont Symphony Orchestra, we would love to hear about your experiences this hour. You can call in at 800-639-2211. We're going to pause here for one more break, but when we come back, Andrew, I would love to hear about some of the other pieces that you all will be performing in your season finale performance, which is coming up in about a week and a half. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, we are learning today about the connections between music and mental health. Our guests are music therapist Pat Lambden of Burlington, Caroline Whiddon, the co-founder and executive director of the Me Too Orchestra, a musical organization for individuals with mental illnesses and the people who support them, and Andrew Crust, the music director of the Vermont Symphony Orchestra. The Me Too Orchestra will join the VSO on Saturday, May 10th for their final performance of the season at the Flynn Center in Burlington. Andrew, the second half of this season finale performance is going to feature, as you mentioned earlier, a Mahler symphony. I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit more about this piece and whether you see any ties between it and the themes of the first half of the performance.
Thank you for letting me talk about Mahler a little bit. And, I think every conductor could talk for 1,700 hours about it. So please cut me off. He's always been at the top of my list. And every time you see a Mahler symphony, it's really an epic experience. In this case, we have 82 people on the stage, 8 French horns, and quadruple woodwinds. He used a massive orchestra to express all of the emotions that he had, and he had a lot. He had a very complicated life. He was really at the apex of Romanticism, and that period which began with people like Tchaikovsky, who were wearing their emotions on their sleeve or in the music, so to speak. But Mahler took it to an extreme with this epic symphony, and it goes from the lowest of the lows to the most triumphant moments in the end of the piece, when he literally calls for the horn section to stand up, because it wasn't loud enough, if they weren't standing. And so and a Mahler symphony is this epic emotional journey. He had a lot of interesting things in his life that created this sound world, and he was suffering from depression. On top of that, he had a lot of health conditions. He knew from an early age, not that early, but relatively early, that he had a heart condition that would one day be his end. And he actually wrote the rhythm of his heart arrhythmia into his Ninth Symphony.
Wow.
Because this sort of specter of death was always hanging over him. And he lost many siblings. He also lost one of his children. He had to convert from Judaism to Catholicism in order to get the top music job in the world because of the anti-Semitism at the time. And for this particular symphony, he also was dealing with, as a person in his mid-20s, his first big breakup with his big first love. And he wrote a song cycle called Songs of a Wayfarer, which addresses that issue and also has topics of self-harm and severe depression. And that music actually reappears in this particular symphony.
Oh, wow.
On top of that, you're dealing with the anxiety of, this is my first symphony. I'm showing the world who I am as a composer. So this piece is just packed full of emotional extremes.
Wow. Okay, you mentioned the horns standing up to get more power behind their sound, and there's 8 French horns. Caroline, if I remember correctly, you were trained in the French horn, right? Are you a Mahler fan?
Oh my gosh. Thanks so much for mentioning the French horn. My anxiety level just went up.
Oh no. I'm so sorry.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I was thinking how people might be a little scared of this program because we're talking so much about mental health and it's such an unsexy topic in so many ways. But this program is hot. It is going to be spectacular. And I'm not just saying that because there will be 8 horns on stage, although that is part of it. The Mahler Symphony is just thrilling. To get a chance to hear this live is so exciting. And again, Jocelyn Morlock's piece certainly stands on its own, even without, the story of Amanda Todd behind it. This is great music. And I hope everyone's going to come out to hear it.
A fun fact about me that no one is asking for, but when I was a little girl joining band, I wanted to play the French horn, but it was too heavy for me to carry from my mom's car to the school building, so I had to size down, and the next instrument was saxophone, which is alto sax, which is what I ended up playing. Pat, you play the sarod, an instrument that many listeners might not be familiar with. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, the sarod is a North Indian instrument. It's a 25-string Indian lute, I guess you could call it, almost a lute, it's used in North Indian classical music.
And you incorporate that into your work as well. It's not just an instrument that you play for yourself.
Well, I'm finding ways to incorporate it. Not directly. I don't bring the sarod to my music therapy sessions. It's a very awkward instrument for music therapy because it takes a while to tune, and so. But Indian classical music itself is so rich in just the amount of scales and modes and different. Well, they're called ragas. So I've been studying North Indian classical music for quite some time, and so I incorporate some of my knowledge of ragas and melody, because the ragas all have a particular mood, and so they can bring different emotions or emotional states. They can support people in different ways. So that's a continual exploration. It's a huge exploration for me, but yeah, it makes its way into my music therapy work for sure.
Yeah. Andrew, is there a instrument that you turn to when you are looking for a sense of peace?
Well, the piano, perhaps. I mean, I so much of my work is more intellectual as I read the score and think about it rather than playing.
Right.
But I think I also love improvising, and I love that we've been talking about that, and really on any instrument. But I have so many friends who are not professionals or they're amateurs, and they always have to apologize about that, and they're afraid to sing for me or play the ukulele for me or whatever because of what I do for a living. And I think we can just remember what Pat said. We call it to play, right? This is, although there is a world, the professional symphony world, in which there is this really high level of expectation, most of the world of music is for fun and enjoyment and relaxation and pondering, deep thoughts. And so I think all of us just play around with an instrument. There's a man in the grocery store near me, actually. There's a piano that they've put there for the public, and he's I think a homeless man, and he is often coming in and just going on a sort of rhapsody that he's inventing on this piano as he's there. And I can just see that his emotions are unfettered and he's just letting it all out through the keys. And so it doesn't have to sound like a polished performance. I think just making the sound and having that response immediately, that feedback, is very therapeutic for anyone.
Well, Andrew, another piece that the VSO is going to be playing at your May 10th concert is called Fanfare for Orchestra, which is a 2008 piece by Alexandra Du Bois. She spoke with my colleague James Stewart recently about this work, and she was telling him about how her music is often inspired by the natural world. Now, you'll be able to hear the full piece by James Stewart. He also talks to you, Andrew, as you know, next week on Vermont Public Classical. But for now, let's take a listen to an excerpt from it with Alexandra.
I write mainly for acoustic instruments, but I do a lot with audio tracks and amplification. One of my last string quartets has a recording of peeper frogs and Canadian geese that I recorded in Ripton, Vermont. The state of Vermont is a place where there's abundant access to wildlife, to trees, to water, to mountains, to landscapes, and that's something that I feel like open space provides to all human beings and to people that are actively creating art.
Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to share about this piece or about Alexandra?
Well, and by the way, nature is a central theme in all Mahler's pieces, and this symphony of his starts, he wrote, like a sound of nature. And I think for a lot of composers, that's the case. And we're so happy to present her music. She lives part-time in Vermont, and I always try and highlight our own artists. But nature is where music came from, right? I mean, as we evolved, we imitated birds and other animals that have different frogs and things that create their own music, whales perhaps. And out of that, we created our own rich human connection with music. But it's all primal. And I think that's why we have such a deep connection with that. It's deep, deep in our brain.
Well, I'm sure it will be a wonderful concert with these three pieces working together to inspire these emotions for the audience and for the performers on stage from the VSO and from the Me Too Orchestra. Caroline, the Me Too Orchestra, the organization has grown so much since you and your husband first founded it about 10, 15 years ago. Where would you like to see it go next?
Oh gosh, it's so easy to dream about the future, and then the practicalities of expansion are always so daunting. We do hear from people all over the country and in fact around the world who say, Oh my goodness, this would be such a great thing for me. I want to play with other people like me, sing with people who also live with mental health issues, and with the right funding, we could easily expand starting tomorrow. But right now, we're really focused on the Northeast, on our New England locations, and just making great music together every week.
Hmm. And for folks who will be seeing members of Me Too performing on the 10th, I don't know, is there anything that you would like for audience members to keep in mind or think about as they listen to this performance about this young Canadian girl, Amanda Todd, who lived through so much?
Sure. I mean, I think anytime we have musicians who are performing, I like for people to really focus on the capabilities. It's very easy for us when we talk about mental illness to think about the illness exclusively and not the fact that these labels and these diagnoses are really just a small part of each human. And there's so much that we can accomplish in addition to living with these symptoms. So, really focusing on the capabilities, reflecting on Amanda's life and the fact that she did not receive enough support, that she didn't find her community. So, what can we all do to create a stigma free zone in our own communities?
Hmm. Pat, I'm wondering if you might have any closing thoughts there to build off what Caroline was just saying about building stigma free communities.
Well, I was really listening to Caroline talk about the illness and where I was going with is that music seems to be this place where that people can connect to within themselves, where there is no illness. It's like it's not touched by the illness. Like that place that responds to music, that makes music, that connects through music. It's like something is alive within all of us that is not touched by anything, by any illness, by any of the difficulties that we encounter in life. That's just so pure and alive. And I think that place is like what I'm trying to invite people and assist people to kind of find within themselves in music therapy. And I think the Me Too Orchestra, and it's like all of these things are kind of driven towards that same end. It would seem just to help people really connect to that place and come together around what's really alive and real.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Andrew Crust, we'll end with you. And same question to you as I posed to Caroline. Do you have any thoughts or message for folks who will be in the audience for this finale performance and are listening, particularly to the music of about Amanda Todd? Anything you'd hope that they would keep in mind or focus on?
Well, it's been a great discussion, and I hope that people will think about all that we've talked about, and exactly as you both just said, how music has this deeper, more primal power. And when we started making music together, it often was for therapeutic reasons. I think singing together, playing drums around the fire, creating cohesion and support. And I just encourage people to get out of the century world of insanity and bills and work and dive into the music and try to focus on it and try to let it take you on a journey, because the music itself tells the story of Amanda Todd. It shows her innocence, it shows her struggle, and at the end it shows the optimism that she was able to bring to future generations. And so try to just dive in and let the music fully take you with all of your attention, and it will be a very powerful experience.
Andrew Crust is the music director of the Vermont Symphony Orchestra. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We are also joined by Caroline Whiddon, the co-founder and executive director of the Me Too Orchestra. Caroline, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
And we are also joined by Pat Lambden of Burlington, who is a music therapist. Pat, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is all we've got for you today. I do want to let you know about our show on Monday, in which we're going to air a special documentary about a primary care doctor in the Northeast Kingdom. We're also going to have a live conversation about the challenges of accessing primary care with the CEO of a community health center in Burlington. Today's show was directed by Aaliyah Papes. Our managing producer is John Ahrens, and our producers are Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro. Anna Berg is our intern, and our call screener is Rick Barrett. Our theme music was composed by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.